The ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives looking into the return of old naira notes has rejected the 10-day extension granted by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Governor of the CBN, Godwin Emefiele, announced the extension after meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari at his country home in Daura, Katsina State. The chairman of the Reps ad hoc committee, Alhassan Doguwa, says the new deadline is a political gimmick and urged Mr Emefiele to comply with Section 20 of the CBN Act or risk a warrant of arrest. The federal lawmakers are insisting that commercial banks must accept the old naira notes 3 months after the expiration of the deadline. Honourable Doguwa says the House will not shift ground unless Mr Emefiele complies with the law. We have in the studio lawyer and public affairs analyst Omoruyi Edoigiawerie. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Great.
And joining us via Zoom is lawyer Liborous Oshoma. Good morning, Liborous. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning, Victoria.
Now, talk to us what your impressions are of this back and forth between the CBN governor and the House of Representatives, what is going on, because they are saying that if he does not comply with the CBN Act, they are going to issue a warrant of arrest.
Yeah, basically, I think what is at play here is ego. The CBN believes that the instruction they have issued and the time limit is enough. And why the House of Rep, statutorily, you can say, yes, the CBN is statutorily responsible to issue legal tender and to handle monetary policies. Also, statutorily, the House of Rep, are responsible to their people. They are representative of the people. They feel the pulse of the people much more than the CBN. And if you look at Section 20 that you cited, Section 21 says, the currency note issued by the bank shall be legal tender in Nigeria at their face value for payment of any amount. And so, in looking at that, the lawmakers are saying our people that we represent, the complaint from the people is that this legal tender should still be in operation. This legal tender that you had issued should still be in operation until our people are able to access the new note that you are introducing. The CBN also is saying, look, the new note is available, but what are the indices for checking its availability? I would have expected that there should be a data of the daily withdrawal from across the counter from the banks and the daily withdrawal from the ATMs. So when you have the daily everyday transaction, not the bulk withdrawal, even though we have limited that one to 150,000 and 500,000 depending on the account holder. But that also should advise the CBN on access to this cash. If daily withdrawal across the counter is even no longer possible because the notes are not available, and daily withdrawal at the ATM, it's a Herculean tax because the ATMs now, there are no currency. Then it means that your policy and the time limit that you have given, is failing. So what do? You extend the time and reappraise your modus operandi. But the CBN is not ready to hear that. And some persons are clapping for them that, yes, this is to limit rigging. This will help, to reduce vote buying. I laugh. And why am I laughing? The same money that you say you want to use to limit vote buying, they are selling it in parties. Those people that can have access to it in large chunks. So if a politician wants it, all he needs to do is sit down in his house and extend a call to the bank manager. And the bank manager, knowing that it's a premium customer, will use bullion van to bring it for him. So, but the everyday market woman, you and I that needs it in ATM, won't get it. And so that is the grouse of the House of Rep members saying, look, we are representative of the people. Yes, you handle monetary policy But we feel the people more than you do. So you should take our feedback and act on it. You can't be acting, in isolation. And then the politicians also are looking quickly, so that I yield the floor to my colleague in the studio. The politicians also are looking at it from the point of view. The moment the CBN governor decided to contest for election, so he dovetailed into politics. And every of his action now will be viewed from the prism of politics.
All right, Omoruyi, let me come to you on this. The point there is, like Liborous has said, the CBN is exercising its statutory powers given to it from the Constitution. The House of Reps, as an institution, is also acting within the powers that it has. All of them, in their own rights, are exercising their legitimate powers as it is. But bringing this together, there seems to be a missing link somewhere. Can you unravel this for us?
I think the issue is about interest. So I try not to politicize issues because you see, when you politicize issues, you get emotional. So let's look at the facts. Let's look at the issues. The law gives CBN the right to change the legal tender. But that same law leaves a leeway for persons who are unable to meet whatever regulations or deadline that the CBN gives to be able to approach CBN to get redemption for the expired legal tender. And I must commend the president of the Nigerian Bar Association, because if you recall, the initial release by CBN did not include this second element of approaching the Apex Bank to return this. And I am grateful that our president raised that issue in an open letter to the governor of CBN, pointing him to sections 20 and 22 of the CBN Act, right? So they have the power to do that, but they also do not have the power to stop people who have the expired notes from redeeming them. The law gives them that leeway, even though I must put a caveat that it also gives CBN certain rights to determine the limitations or the regulations around approaching them to return this currency. But that right is there. But what is the bigger issue? Extending to the 30th of June isn't the problem. We have a serious problem with financial inclusion. Majority of Nigerians remain unbankable, unbanked. As I speak to you, the data is clear. Less than 40% of Nigerians are bankable. Less than, and that's a dangerous statistic. And so when the National Assembly is saying, hey, let's extend to June, what really is the intention of extending to June? Are you putting measures in place to enable financial inclusion? I listened to the debate at the National Assembly, and I listened to the reason a lot of the legislators gave for this extension. Oh, people haven't seen this note. There are no ATMs. There are no banks. What is the plan? Do you know that there are local governments in this country that don't have a bank?
Absolutely.
And there are senatorial zones that don't even have an ATM. People have to travel 2-3 days ahead to go to the nearest ATM. That's a dangerous statistic. And no one is talking about the fact that we've got to bridge that gap, that dangerous gap.
But if I'm cutting, the CBN says it has 30,000 super agents that are going across these areas without banks
for a country
for
of
the
200
cash
million people.
Swap.
For a country. So now, when you talk about cash swap, in pari passu, yesterday CBN released another guideline that says only 20 naira, 50 naira, 100 naira notes should be paid over the counter.
Yes.
Right? The intention of this currency change is partly also to move us to a cashless system, reduce the amount of fiscal cash in circulation. Is that possible with our statistics today? Can you achieve that? So rather than sit down at the national...
Is it achievable? Is that possible?
It's not.
Right.
It's not, because a majority of Nigerians remain financially excluded. And these are the issues. So, senator representing XYZ in XYZ region where there is serious financial exclusion, what's the conversation around building financial inclusion? Right? In fact, the closest that has even been able to, so here's the thing. The statistics are so staggering that between 2010 and 2022, 12 years, you've only had a 9% increase from 30% to 39% or thereabout. And we're not talking about that. So when June comes, if you extend till June, what happens after June? I get the new naira notes, but I can only get 20,000 naira. And yet, I am still financially excluded. So let's look at really who stands to benefit from an extension.
Right.
Are we not misplacing our priorities? Are we having the right conversations? Because the closest source of financial inclusion to the unbanked are the POS operators. And even this policy is going to kick them out of business. So
what are we saying?
It's important that we go back, and the National Assembly needs to engage CBN beyond an extension.
But you need an extension.
No, so Liborous, I'm not saying we don't need an extension.
Okay, no,
I'm saying beyond the extension, we have a bigger monster waiting for us. Financial exclusion.
I agree with you.
The bulk of Nigerians remain financially excluded.
Right, Liborous,
you can stay in the city, you can stay in Lagos, you can stay in the urban areas, and you live in a bubble. A very dangerous bubble. And I think that even our regulators, even our lawmakers, even the people in power are getting so entwined in that bubble that they forget that there are bigger issues. Our people remain unbanked. The bulk of Nigerians remain financially excluded. And the cashless policy as it stands today, if implemented, will impoverish people.
All right, let's get Liborous' reaction because he has been itching to speak. Liborous, you can go ahead and speak now.
No, I agree with my colleague. What I am just saying is that for all of this to be achieved, it shouldn't be this knee-jerk approach or bringing down the hammer heavily approach that the CBN is adopting. Oh, we must bring down the hammer today. For all of this now, it is good that we're having this conversation. So also now, let's begin to point out these areas. CBN needs to listen to the conversation, listen to everybody. The CBN governor should not act as if he's a law unto himself. That no, we have said it and it must be so. Everybody, including the NBA, has pointed out these issues to say, this has nothing to do with politics. Let's remove politics from it. This politics of, oh, no, we're trying to stop corruption. We're trying to stop politicians from buying votes. That's not the issue. Because these politicians, even if all that is available is 10 million naira of this new note, these politicians will be the first to get it before the ordinary people that need it most. So we should remove politics of, yes, we're trying to, stop politicians from buying votes, having access to cash to buy votes. What is the encouragement of the CBN to ensure that banks, that the unbanked banks get to these areas, where, like in my village, for example, my village in Anegbete, for us to do banking, we'll have to travel from Anegbete to Auchi. And that's like a 45 minutes journey. So some of the people in these places, they also should have access to internet facility. Let me give you an instance. I was on my way to Ijebu-Ode. I stopped by Midway to eat. After eating, my ATM, the POS, there was no network. I tried to transfer on 3 occasions. He was giving me error. I had old notes in my pocket, 1,000 naira notes. The people said, well, if we accept it, we don't have where to spend it because of the limit. So except you do transfer, the facility for doing transfer is not there. POS is not working. I was held hostage. Of course, I've eaten.
All right.
It took me time. On Sunday, after queuing up to buy fuel at 300 naira per liter,
All right.
I had to queue up also to use POS to pay because it was only one POS machine that was working. So what are we doing?
Achieving cashless policy. We have seen the chaos everywhere. Some persons are saying, I have money, I can't use my money, I cannot access my money. What is the picture you can paint for us with regards to what is happening now if we say we are really gunning for a cashless policy as it stands?
Let me quickly tell you. Take the Oshun election, for example. We said Beavers was a one-size-fits-all and that it was going to eliminate, manipulations in our election. And with the judgment of the tribunal in Oshun, what had been exposed is that without adequate network, without appropriate internet, the Beavers machine can also malfunction. From the same INEC server, you have three results, 3 different result sheets. 2, talking about voting, until the machine itself was examined in court. The machine that was used without internet. So take this to the banks. Even as we speak, even in the cities where we have internet facilities and access, there are still times where the bank will tell you the network is down. And so when you are planning a redesigning of legal tender like this, and you're trying to mop up cash in the system, and you're trying to limit cash transactions, you don't just do it so that your people will suffer. What led to POS operators, graduates becoming POS operators on the road? Even banks were giving out POS to people as money agents in areas where they can't establish branches, because the primary purpose of these banks is not a philanthropist organization. They are there to make profit. When they do not make profit, CBN will sanction them. So CBN should take politics out of its monetary policies. Take politics out of your monetary policy and look at the bigger picture and see how do we ensure that we sit down with the internet providers to ensure that even the internet providers are out there for business. I remember even before internet got to my village, all the back and forth that we did with the service providers, they said, what can the money that is coming from that village service the cost of diesel? Because we need to build all of this in. So now that we're talking about cashless policy, because elections are around the corner, because the politicians are the ones telling you, so we're all playing politics into it. We're not looking at that young boy, that young girl, who, for lack of no job, decide to operate POS by the roadside. So now the CBN is saying, no, I don't care about you. We're going to limit cash transactions to 20,000. Yet, you have the tomato seller in my backyard who does not have an account. You have, even in Lagos, inside Lagos here. So what have we done to ensure that these people are dragged into the net? First, we cannot look at our statistics and say, yes, we have a lot of people now who are, in the banking net. So we can safely say that we want to limit cash transactions. In the UK, where most of the transactions are online, yet when they are redesigning currency, they've given extension till 2024. What we need to do to limit vote buying is not just enough to redesign our currency. What we need to do to limit vote buying is we need to eradicate poverty. so that this cash will no longer be as attractive to would-be voters. We also need to improve our technology, the same technology that we're talking about now, so that you will limit, the manipulation in the process. But look at even the currency that we're talking about. People are spraying it in parties. They can afford to buy it. But the woman that needs it in the market cannot afford it. So let's have an extension, and then let us sit down and expand the technology to ensure that we have more people in the banking process. We have more people whose business should not be affected in their day-to-day, transaction with money. But otherwise, in trying to punish the politicians that will still buy vote at the end of the day, you end up crumbling your economy and introduce poverty. I don't think that the CBN is reasoning beyond its nose at this stage.
All right, Omoruyi, let me bring you into this now. The CBN is saying we have printed adequate number of cash to go around. We have distributed to all banks, and we expect the banks to do the needful. Now, you and I have complained, like Liborous has said, we're not seeing the monies. We're not seeing the cash at the ATMs and even anywhere. But go to parties. You see people throwing money, in fact, sharing money or even spraying in bundles, as the case may be. Now, they're pointing fingers to saboteurs within the banking system. And in fact, DSS and EFCC have been deployed to banks to begin to monitor what banks are doing. What do you make of the issue of the allegations that saboteurs are working within the system?
I think it's an issue of lack of consequences, which has been the bane of our democracy, bane of our leadership. We lack systems that impose consequences for our actions or our inactions. Every naira note is numbered. There is a data on all the funds released to the banks. And there's also a statistics on how much each customer should receive. At the time, I think it was 5,000 naira. You could only get 5,000 naira over the counter after some time, And I think that CBN should receive some knocks on the tardiness of the regulation. It's as if they wake up every day and they are reactively throwing regulations because they seem not to have a clear grasp or a clear direction, right? But we lack consequences because it's very easy to trace where 1 million naira of new notes got, how it got to a party. It's very easy. And if we begin to do those things, if the regulators begin to impose stiff sanctions. But you see, what happens when the regulator needs to be regulated? What happens when the regulator, appears a bit, for want of better language, indisciplined? Right? And like Liborous had said, the biggest albatross CBN has today is the fact that whether it's confirmed or it's not confirmed, at one point in time, it's the head of its organization appeared to have political affiliation. Whether it's true or not is a story for another day, and it's not the object of our conversation. I'm not really interested. But I'm saying
it is true.
We are in a situation where we lack consequences, right? But let's leave how Naira gets to. You see, I'm concerned about the implication of allowing policies like this stand. Nigerians are very used to adjusting. The fuel queues come, we complain for a few days, and then we get used to it. We get there at 4 a.m. and we wait till 12 p.m. to buy our fuel, grumble and leave. We get used to it. It becomes a way of life. And no matter how stiff these regulations come, we'll figure a way to go around it. But that's our biggest, that's our strength, but also a very dangerous blind spot. There are big issues. I have never seen a legislator on the floor of the National Assembly say, we need to pass a regulation to ensure that all the commercial banks in Nigeria have either a branch or a mobile money unit or
In our
some measure of
constituencies.
in every local government in Nigeria. That's 774 bank branches. The banks are even reducing their ATMs. In 2019, you had 5,600 and something ATMs. Today, it's just a little over 5,000. So what's happening? They're even shutting down.
Costs.
POS operators are increasing, on the other hand, to 1 million. So you have about 1 million POS operators in Nigeria today providing services, and you're shutting out those people. And then the people who are reducing their infrastructure and facilities, you are enabling them more when they don't have the capacity to provide services, to provide this cashless service. And really, it's easy. A cashless policy should make things easy. Because when you travel abroad, that's when you realize that it's an anomaly to hold 1,000 naira note, any denomination in thousands. I've never seen more than a 20-pound note. So if you bring out a denomination higher, they look at you like you're a thief. So yes, the intentions may be right to bring us to tune with best practice, but the reality on ground is that we have done nothing substantial to bridge the financial exclusion gap, to give us the temerity to now impose the sort of regulations that we are beginning to impose. Now, the second most important issue in this discourse is the fact that when you look at financial inclusion, the traditional commercial banks are unable to bridge that gap. How are you going to enable startups, right? So people always laugh that, look, you always have a way of bringing in your startups in every conversation. But yes, you need to begin to enable fintech startups to help you bridge this gap. Before Flutterwave and Paystack came, there were certain issues with payment integration. And these startups were able to link and help the traditional institutions. Now, there's a solid payment gateway thanks to them. Why can't the CBN or why can't our regulators sit down with these young, tech-driven persons and say, look, we need to bridge the gap, bring payment solutions that can work across this country? Why is the National Assembly, yes, kudos to them, they passed the Startup Act, but even beyond that, why is the National Assembly not having the right conversations? It is a shame that 4 years after my tenure as a senator, I stand up to say my people are financially excluded and there are no banks, there are no ATMs, they have to carry cash and they haven't seen the cash. What are we talking about? See, the level of mediocrity is becoming like folklore. You know, it's beginning to look like stranger than fiction. We have become so mediocre that the conversations that we're having at important places are so ridiculous, so to speak. You extend till June. What happens after June 30th? Are you going to bridge the financial inclusion gap? You even extend to 2024. What happens? If we don't have the right conversations, take it to June, take it to whatever date, we'll continue to find ourselves in a situation where we'll have issues. If also the regulators don't sit up and begin to look at making people responsible for the consequences of their actions, how did 1 million naira get to a party? What bank? Now let's have your records. Who, how? Where's this money going to? Because really, it's not going to, this cashless, whatever this policy is, whatever this naira swap is, like Liborous has said, it's not going to stop corruption during the electioneering process. Because the same people who are merchants and selling in parties will sell to politicians. So, and in fact, let me just let out a cat. New notes will even buy votes faster.
Why is that?
And I'll tell you why. So if I give you an old 1,000 naira note and a new 500 naira note, it's emotional intelligence, it's human intuition. You are you are more attracted by the 500 naira note.
The new note.
You rush for it because you feel, oh, this is gold. I haven't seen this.
It's like a new bride.
It's like a new bride. So the timing is off. But the issues are a lot bigger. And we've got to begin to sit down and have those fundamental conversations. And the law is also clear. I'm going to go back to the provisions of Section 22. Even after the deadline passes, you are within your rights as a citizen of Nigeria to approach the Apex Bank with your old note and demand a swap.
Right. Let's bring Liborous back into the conversation. The CBN governor was invited to the floor of the House and is supposed to appear today. Omoruyi has said that we should be having serious conversations. So I'm wondering what kind of conversation you think they would be having with the CBN governor today if he appears.
Yeah, thank you. And like my brother Omoruyi has said, I doubt if this conversation today would be around what we are discussing now. I can tell you what you're going to have if he appears. Banters. You know, is the money not getting to where it should get to? And the extension, why there won't be extension, why there should be extension. But quickly, I must say this, because Omoruyi also said that whether it's been established or not established, people were alleged, it was alleged that people bought form for Emefiele to contest. But Emefiele hired the services of a senior advocate to go to court to challenge or to seek the interpretation of the CBN Act why he should not stand for election, or if he has the power to stand for election. So these are actions that point to the fact that he was indeed interested in that issue, or he was interested in vying for that office. So if he wasn't interested, he wouldn't have, taken that step to even hire the service of a lawyer alone. So I needed to quickly chip that in. And then also, we're discussing the issue of commercial banks and the rest. The banks are out to do business. The banks are not philanthropic organizations. They are not, NGOs. Also, you talked about startups. Fantastic. What has the CBN and the government done to say, we're going to redesign this note, we want to limit cash transactions. Let's look at these startup technology companies and find a way of, extending internet facilities first to all of these rural areas. Victoria, if you travel abroad, go to our international airports. You can't use Wi-Fi in our international airport. It is not working. But go to Abidjan, just close to you here, at their airport. The moment you land the airport, they have free Wi-Fi. Go to Dakar in Senegal. As long as you sit down there, you have free Wi-Fi at the airport. Yeah. Shops, mall. If you go abroad, Wi-Fi is almost like a fundamental right in some countries. The internet is like a fundamental right. We are not discussing internet access to internet facilities that will enable cashless transaction. We're not discussing it. Nobody's talking about it. Even at our national institutions, like the National Assembly, even at our gateway, like our airport, there is no internet facility for a first timer. They even say we are charging money, you pay to even access the internet facility. It is not available. And so, how do you now encourage or enhance cashless transaction in a society that does not even understand the basics of introducing the basic platform, the basic necessities for enhancing cashless transaction? So it's not enough to say we want to limit the cash in people's hands. I also said something. What is the daily or monthly across the counter transactions of these banks? What is the monthly or daily withdrawal from the ATMs for now, while we are looking for opportunity to enhance cashless transaction? Why are the POS operators increasing by the day? Why banks are shutting down operations? The banks, some of them are even enhancing POS operators because for them it is easier to manage in distributing and transferring cash. So why do I need a big branch? Coupled with the Japa syndrome, as I speak to you now, in some of the banks, a job that is meant for 7 persons, you find 2 persons doing because a lot of them had left. So when you put all of this in the mix, yes, it is good for us to have a cashless transaction. Go to Dubai. Nobody takes money from you if you enter. Sorry, go to America, for example. Uber service, you can't pay with cash. Yeah. If you don't have, unfortunately, if you don't have a card or an account, forget it. So it is good to limit the cash available, but it shouldn't be done in isolation. And so that is why, for those members listening to me today, to listening to Omoruyi and I, the question should be, first and foremost, what do we need to do to ensure that the right facilities are in place, to ensure that we have internet availability. It is not enough to say, go and have a bank branch. To ensure that we have internet availability in most of these places, so that if you are carrying out a transaction, a cashless transaction, it will be seamless. It's just like me on my way to Ijebu, transfer was not going. Network not available. The POS machine there, no network. And yet, I can't do cash. So if at my level, you can't say I am a villager that does not have a bank account. I had 3 cards in my pocket. None of them was working. So if at that level, what I just needed was an internet connection that was strong enough for the POS, and I would pay seamlessly. You get to the airport abroad, you tap your card in some cases, you swipe it. Nobody's asking you savings or current.
All right, Liborous.
But here, we are still learning, sorry, quickly, we are still learning the ropes. So the National Assembly and the CBN need to sit down and discuss what we need to do to ensure, lay the framework and the foundation and put them in place, and gradually, it's a gradual process. It is not a 100-meter dash the way they are trying to make it. It's a marathon. And in a marathon, you don't move with the speed they are moving. Thank you.
All right. Omoruyi, as we wind down gradually, the point there is, from what both of you have said, considering the issue of internet, considering the issue of terrains, the issue of illiteracy level, the issue of unbanked, and also the financial backbone of the infrastructure that is not in place, it seems Nigeria is not ready for that kind of cashlessness that the CBN might want to put in place. But one would say that somebody has to start up from somewhere. What is the ultimate way forward from your perspective?
Extend digital infrastructure to the rural areas. Begin to build the necessary infrastructure to bridge that financial exclusion gap. Because until we do that, the cashless policy will continue to be a mirage.
Lawyer and public affairs analyst Omoruyi Edoigiawerie, as well as lawyer Liborous Oshoma, for your time on the program.